Welcome to our presentation of Nefarious Voyage. Nefarious Voyage is an on-rails shooter set in space where the player controls two turrets as he battles enemies and solves puzzles.
The player's main responsibility in the game is controlling the gun turrets of the ship. There are two gun turrets that the player controls on the ship. One is located on the top and faces forward, and one is on the bottom and faces towards the rear. Both spin in a 180-degree arc. The player progresses through the level, destroying enemy ships, mines, and asteroids to progress to the next level, which there are 3.
We actually were pretty close to our original concept at the end. We wanted a two-turret ship with which would be flying through a space steam. We wanted some moving ships. We wanted some static targets. We wanted an asteroid field with authentic asteroids, and we were able to get that all done. We also planned out for a 3-level game, and we wanted a story that led the player from beginning to end, and we also wanted some mini boss encounters as well as a big boss at the end, and we were able to deliver on all that. So that was a fairly good thing that we got through. Aside from that, we deviated a little bit at the end where we had some extra time, so we explored a new approach on level 3, and instead of just having a space environment, we had a confined environment, and that worked out well.
Definitely in space, so that for us meant that it was in the future, even if it wasn't in the future in some way. If it was maybe Star Wars-y, whereas technically in the past, but it would still have this futuristic technology feel to where Earth today would definitely be in the Stone Age by comparison. So we wanted the music to feel the same way. We wanted the music to feel in the future. So we went for this epic feel type of music, but it had to be the techno at the same time. Rock, pop, rap, nothing would have fit that sort of feel. So we went with this techno feel, and we were fortunate enough to get a musician to just compose some great works that we have for our game, and we fell in love with the music that he gave us, and it just fit perfectly. As for the audio, for the voiceover, we had one of our resident designers with us working on our game, Marissa. She did a fantastic job with the voices, and it worked out great since we wanted to have a tutorial for the game, but we didn't want to either break the flow of the game or make we feel like we're hand-holding him through some pause, hey, stop the game, read this, do this, or whatever. So we figured since it's in the future, why not have the AI of the ship talk to the player?
A cool feature about our game is the energy management system. This system allows the player to choose exactly how they want to direct their energy. They can use it either towards the shields or towards the turrets, making one more powerful and the less a lot weaker. Using more energy towards the shield will decrease the fire rate, just as would using more energy towards the turrets will decrease the shield protection. The increase in shield power really makes it hard for enemies to get attacks through, but the turrets will be a lot less powerful and the fire rate would decrease. There is also a really noticeable change when the energy is directed towards the turrets. The fire rate increases heavily, and the damage output is almost doubled when this transfer of energy takes place.
Hi, my name is Jeff Kennedy, and I'm one of the team members for Nefarious Voyage. One of the things I think that went very right for our team was that we meshed well together for a working unit. We didn't have any problems for anybody dropping the ball for their work. We didn't have any problems with people not pulling their end or anything. When we originally came together, we just started hashing things out. The team just started moving at a breakneck speed, which was very, very nice. We didn't have this sluggish feel to our team. We just started working. So that was really nice. And at the end of certain weeks, we actually had people who were requesting stuff to do because they were done with their stuff and they wanted to continue working on the project. So there wasn't a lack of motivation for our team or people not getting their work done on time or somebody just not doing their work. It was great. In fact, we really had a good team that meshed well together.
Our movement system worked exceptionally well, despite the splines being tough to manipulate at times. From the very first month we had this system implemented and running for the player as well as enemies. This made our lives much easier in the long run, since we didn't have to bother using Matinee for faking the on-rail system. All of the proper variables were exposed in the editor, so it made it easy for the whole team to use them after the initial code was set up.
One of the things that I feel went right for our project were the audio cues that we used to notify the player of events that were happening within the game. The audio cues that were recorded by Marissa fit nicely into our game because with it being an on-rail shooter, the player needs to feel like they're on a computer-controlled, AI-driven ship that's on autopilot. The audio cues give hints to the player to let them know of impending enemies or obstacles that might be in their way, while also giving a little bit of the story to the player in the process.
Besides just using a 3-level structure to present our game, our 3-level structure also enabled us to give players different ways to play. Level 1 is a little slower paced and acts as an introduction. Level 2 is pure shoot 'em up. And level 3 is more of a puzzle-based level.
What went right with level 2 is that it's pretty fast-paced compared to the rest of the levels in our game. In this level, we introduced more enemy encounters that gave the player, a more of a shoot-'em-up type of gameplay. There are shielded enemies that require a higher rate of damage, and then there are enemies that have a higher fire rate that require, a higher use of shields. Really just a lot of enemies to keep the player busy and, having fun at the same time. Level 2 also ends with a boss fight that gives the player a chance to shoot it out with a mass number of enemies or use their own weapon against them as a massive attack.
I think that went really well on level 3 was the room-by-room approach that was the pace was completely controlled by us, and it gave the player some time to actually sink in the environment and all the triggers that we put in, the lights, the enemies. So even though this is a space shooting simulation, having that change and that really confined space felt really good. One thing that quite didn't work well was actually the enemy AI. We were not able to leverage any of the UDK AI systems since they all needed a ground and some kind of a pawn that can actually walk around a floor. And since this was an actual space environment, we were only able to implement some turrets on top of ships so that they could actually aim on the player. But again, they were not very aware of what was going on, and we had a really hard time making them smart enough and convincing enough so that the player would actually be a little bit more immersed and actually care a little bit more about the enemies instead of just flying by them and shooting them and that's it.
One thing that went wrong during the project was us trying to get a mini-map in the game. There were many technical issues with getting the mini-map fully drawn out correctly whenever you're in game. The player was getting traced all over the screen while gameplay was happening, and it ended up not working properly. And so what we did to make up for it, because we knew we really needed the mini-map, just to give the player a good, overview, we used extensive voiceover work that told the player about upcoming encounters such as asteroid fields, enemy ships, nebulas, speed changes within the ships, and all kind of like different enemy types that were approaching.
One of the things that showed that we needed to improve upon towards the end of our project was our file organization. Originally, we had started with just putting all of our packages into one large package, and we didn't actually do a level streaming process. We just since we jumped into getting our work done, we didn't really take the time to implement that, which showed it towards the end of our project that we should have done it. I would highly recommend to any team, take the time before you start moving really fast, take the time, hash out how you need to do the file organizations, because one of the things we found was when somebody needed to input something into our large UPK, somebody else needed to put something in there, or they were working on it. So we eventually, towards the end, started breaking things down into individual UPKs, what we should have done to begin with. We just wanted to make things easier to organize, but when doing that, it made things harder to work with. And then I would definitely say take the time to implement streaming or some sort of process where everybody can work on a level at the same time. If you know how to do that, if you don't, look it up. I would highly recommend that because it would really it would have saved a lot of time for us people just waiting on certain things to get done so they could work on it. So that was one of the things that we could have done better.
One of the things that I felt that went wrong for our project was the fact that we weren't able to integrate the proposed super weapon. The super weapon that we had thought about implementing was a concept where if the player accumulated a certain amount of energy, they would be able to unleash a special attack. Then this special attack, in turn, would destroy all the enemies on the screen. The main reason why we weren't able to implement the super weapon was simply time. We did not have enough time to work on it with being in such a short production schedule. We just were not able to get to it as there were other features that were more important to our project.
We had too many enemy types to start off with. We fixed this by paring down our enemy types or combining them to make single enemies. A lot of our enemies were based on the same design, but they had one aspect different. So we just merged a lot of those into the same thing.
While I do like our reticule and targeting system, it is far from perfect. For starters, the reticule that appears on the screen all the time and the bounding boxes that draw around certain targets use different trace functions. This made it difficult to get each working properly because what worked for one crosshair function did not work for the other. It also took an excessive amount of time to get both systems functional, about 2 weeks before imperfect versions were implemented. I learned quite a bit throughout the last 4 months and improved some skills that I already had from earlier in the program. I was able to level up my scripting capabilities quite a bit as well as my general troubleshooting skills. I also learned about splines, which I never even knew existed prior to using them in this project. As stated earlier, they were a great way to handle movement for our player as well as our enemies within the game. More than anything, though, I learned to be confident in myself because while there is much I do not know, I was able to troubleshoot and research most problems and find a way to get things done regardless.
One of the biggest skills that I was working with Unreal Script and scripting in general. I'm not the strongest scripter, but I was able to learn various things about object-oriented programming that I wasn't so strong with in the past. This was due to some very strong team members that I have. Two other skills that I was able to learn more about and work with during the course of this project was working with Cascade to make some cool particle effects, as well as working with lighting in UDK. Lighting is its own animal and is very difficult to master, and I'm still not quite there, but I was able to do more than I was able to in the past.
I got a better handle on scripting, but one of the things I learned how to do completely from scratch was I learned how to make audio cues, and I learned a lot of the functionality of the Kismet sound and draw text nodes because I had to use them for the audio cues.
Since working on this project, I learned a lot of things in UDK, such as attaching objects to splines and creating paths for them to move along. Also, I worked with creating particles in Cascade and editing weapons and meshes through Unreal Scripting. In Cascade, I learned how to create custom particles in which I got to edit things such as the lifespan of the particle, how it explodes, and most definitely how it looks. I got more and more comfortable with Unreal Script for Final Project because I got to really get deep into the whole extending off of objects idea and see how it's really more of you borrowing features for something and then turn it into your own type of actor or whatever you're trying to do with it, which was pretty cool.